Good morning, everybody. My name is Vinayak Joshi. Welcome to Live on Culfit, and it's a weekend as well. So a warm welcome to all of you. And with me today is Dr. Satish with me. Uh, Good morning, Dr. Satish.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Uh, Very happy to have you here. First of all, it's great to talk to people like you because you work so hard to make people's life better every day, and really appreciate that effort and the years of experience that you carry is something that we want to dig deep into in today's conversation. To set a context, so we have a program called Choose to Lose, which is a 4-week fat loss program where it involves multiple formats like strength, cardio, dance, yoga, and beginner, intermediate, so many other levels. So this is a part of that same program where every week we pick a topic which is essential for us to understand and put it into practice, and that may be nutrition and various other topics, right? And today we are here to talk about the importance of sleep, which will help to lose weight or for that fat loss. Because there's a very famous saying: all we need is a square meal, a nice, decent shelter, and a comfortable place to sleep. And sleep is one of the basic necessities of human beings, right? So, how do you describe sleep? Because being a sleep specialist, let me share the credentials of our doctor here today. He is a consultant psychiatrist and also a very famous sleep disorder specialist. We'll talk about it more. He's done tons of work in national and international level. He's given various speeches at a lot of conferences, and it's very short. It's a very short duration to talk about his achievements. All I can say is, if you have a question about sleep, he's the person to answer. So we are opening up for the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask a doctor. We'll curate it and we'll pass it on to him. So while you type your questions, let me start by asking a few questions myself, which will help us understand about sleep. So how do you describe sleep? How do you basically what's the value of sleep in anybody's life?
Yeah. No, at the outset, I would like to really thank the Gulfit and Vinayak for giving me this opportunity to interact with lots of people who were very keen to understand more about the sleep and how it can impact their health, their weight, and their general performance levels in life. So thank you very much, and hello everyone. So to answer Vinayak's question, look, sleep. What I feel is, to answer it in a scientific way, it's a very complex psychophysiological system. So it's
Okay.
not just one system that guides our sleep.
Hmm.
Yes, there's a biological phenomena, physiological phenomena happening in the background. There is a psychological mechanism. So to have a good night sound sleep, what you need is a lot of factors. It's not just about your physical health, your psychological state, your personality factors, the kind of stress you're dealing with in life. So many other factors matter. So primarily it's an activity of the brain, by the brain, and for the brain, right? It's not an Abraham Lincoln's definition, but I say it wherever I go. Look, it's an activity by the brain. So years ago, 30, 40 years ago, it was believed that when we sleep, everything rests, right? We rest, everything else rests in the body, the systems, but it's absolutely not the case.
Okay.
What we found in the last 30, 40 years is phenomenal. So the kind of mechanism, the activities that goes on in the background is unbelievable. Look, it's a thinking in a different biochemical state. That's all it is, right? Mind
I
and
mean, it's a very interesting statement that you made, right? It's not like your body rests completely. There are certain activities that happens in the background, even when we sleep. I would like to dig a little deeper.
brain.
What is functioning when we are sleeping?
Yeah, many things. And I think, let me list out, first of all, let's begin with the wear and tear we go through. When we get through a day of a busy day, of course, we put in so much of mental efforts, physical efforts, and all that. And there's a lot of wear and tear psychologically and physically. All the repair work is happening when you're asleep. So it's extremely important that you rest well, sleep well, so that you're ready for the following day. The repair work, the energy regulation work, the temperature regulation, energy regulation, metabolism regulation, energy preservation activities, and far more important than all these things is the growth, right? A lot of people may not know this, but particularly if you have young children at home, we encourage them to sleep for longer hours. No, there is a scientific reason behind it. I'm sure you all heard of this growth hormone. The growth hormone surge happens when children are in deep sleep. There's a particular stage of sleep. I think when we take our discussion further, we can understand more about sleep cycles and all that. In a particular stage of sleep called deep sleep, also called slow wave cycle of sleep, that's when the growth hormone surge happens, which is extremely essential for the physical and the cognitive development of child. So we do need to encourage our children to sleep longer. Many things, I mean, like apart from what I mentioned, the preservation and repair works and the growth, immunity develops, our cardiovascular health stabilizes, because the insomnia is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular diseases. Independent risk factor. If everything else is normal in your life and you don't sleep well, you could still be, having cardiovascular problems. So many things do happen in the background. Apart from
But
your hobbies. Yeah, sure.
yeah, so no, but to put it in layman language, sleep is all about repairing your body and
Yeah,
preparing for the next day.
absolutely. Repairing and
So
preparing. Yeah, that's a nice one.
exactly. Okay. Good morning, Geeta. She has a very interesting question. Even I had this in my mind.
Right.
So there is something called as a circadian rhythm, right? Again, to simplify it, what is a circadian rhythm? You're supposed to work during the day and sleep during the night, and that's what human beings have been doing for millions of years, right?
Yes, yes.
And now in the last 30 to 40 years, things have changed. We have the world is non-stop, the city never sleeps, the world never sleeps, right?
Right.
Everything is happening. The many other countries are connected, so we are forced to work at different time zones.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of people who actually work during the night and sleep during the day. And my question to you is, that's what is Geeta asking as well. What is the best practice? What is your suggestion for such kind of people who are in profession that demands to work you during the night and sleep during the day? And is 7 or 8 hours of sleep enough? Is what she's asking. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Okay. There are two different questions, Geeta. I think let's me first answer the question about the circadian rhythm. Look, I want all of you to take this answer with a pinch of salt. The reason I'm stating this is because, yes, what we know so far from the scientific background about the circadian rhythm and how it works and how ideally we should be sleeping is one thing. But let's not forget, parallelly, there's some evolution happening, right?
Okay.
Evolution happening, and human brain is trying to adapt itself, and because you mentioned about the whole world and the lifestyle has changed so much that in the city never sleeps and nobody sleeps these days. People are working late into the night and maybe sleeping whenever they get time and all that. So yes, we can talk about what's the ideal state right now and what are the consequences if you don't follow certain rhythm. But at the same time, parallel, I think there always will be some evolution happening in terms of how we adapt to the biological clock. So circadian rhythm is basically governed by biological clock. Literally there is a clock. Trust me, there is literally a clock in our brain in the region called hypothalamus, and it regulates many things. It's not just about sleep. It regulates our mood, our motivation levels, our metabolism, cortisol secretions, and including sleep. So many things are regulated in the circadian rhythm. One amongst them is sleep, right? So there has to be a rhythm in which we perform our activities so that our body clock responds accordingly and we perform at our best. So sleep, like you rightly said, is governed by an hormone called melatonin.
Okay.
Melatonin hormone, the sleep, so the circadian rhythm governs our sleep through this hormone, which is melatonin is a sleep-inducing hormone. It is there in all of our brains. So look at the beauty of the nature. The melatonin secretion happens when there is darkness. When there is darkness, the melatonin secretion happens, and when there is sunlight, melatonin secretion stops. So what is the
Okay.
nature telling us? The nature is telling us that it should be sleeping in the night. But however, with our lifestyle and changing evolutions and all, we have different lifestyles. I think that can sometimes affect our sleep, and we may end up having what we call circadian rhythm disorders. Sleep disorders specific to the biological clock. We can talk a little more about it. There is advanced sleep phase disorder, delayed phase disorder, and there is jet lag, which a lot of people will be experiencing when they travel to different time zones, shift work disorder. So circadian rhythm disorder is definitely related to the clock we need to be following. So it's basically when there's a mismatch between what the biological clock expects and what we practice. If there is a mismatch, we call it circadian rhythm disorder.
Okay. But for people who work during the night, what is the best practice for them to catch up on the sleep that they have lost?
Like I already told you, all of us have this innate ability to adapt ourselves. So
Okay.
I've still not answered the second question, which Geeta asked about the duration bit. I'll come back to that. The reason I'm bringing that issue about duration here is, the adaptability matters. Okay, let's talk about the ideal world. Ideal world is, like I said, we need to be sleeping in the night. But for people working in the night, yes, they have no other choice but to catch up on their sleep. So at least, the quality, the quantity, and the regularity of sleep, all three are extremely important. Ideal world, yes, we should be sleeping in the night, but when that doesn't happen, at least stick to one particular time. Don't keep on changing it. The erratic pattern will only result in disruption of your biological clock. So eventually, you may, end up having serious sleep disorders, even later in the life. It's not just about sleep disorders. What it might also lead to depression, other physiological problems, and sometimes dementia, and so on. So
Yeah, I
regular,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, I mean that's where I was coming towards, because sleep is also a major factor for your emotional balance, right?
absolutely.
So we'll talk about it later, but I have another interesting question.
You want me to answer that duration thing, or we'll come back later?
Yeah, sure. But Aaron, it says Aaron here. So Aaron says, sometimes we have disturbed sleep, and like basically you get up multiple times during your sleeping, right? So how to overcome that? How to get into a deep sleep state and maintain it? Is it a practice, or do we have to do something beyond it?
Yeah, look, of course, how we need to approach this is we need to identify the underlying cause. If somebody is not able to sleep well, but look, when we call about insomnia or sleeplessness, there are actually four types of insomnia. People
Okay.
who can't get into sleep as soon as they go to bed, right?
Okay.
Or some people they actually get into sleep as soon as they hit the bed, but they keep waking up in between. Like Aaron asked that question, keep waking up in between. That's also insomnia. In some people, both these two things are perfectly normal, but they keep waking up very early in the morning, like 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. And they can't get back to sleep later. So early morning waking. And fourth is some people have all three of these perfectly normal, but when they wake up, they don't feel refreshed. They appear to be sleeping perfectly fine, but they don't feel refreshed. Look, all these things could be insomnia. Now, when we talk about insomnia, the best approach is to find the underlying cause. Insomnia is a symptom, it's not a disorder. So, what we
Okay.
do is we try and identify the underlying cause. We could take them through a detailed assessment. I can talk about the potential causes of insomnia, which maybe during the talk we'll address it. And so the brief answer to Aaron is, if you're waking up in between, having disturbed sleep, what we need to do is, we need to identify the underlying cause. There always will be an underlying cause, which is something you sleep. Identify the cause, treat the cause. It's not just about giving you some sleeping tablets or anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, pretty interesting. How do you identify that underlying cause? Is it possible I mean, can I do it myself, or should I consult a doctor?
Look, some things we can do. The basic screening you yourself can do. I know that's exactly what I do when I sleep affected patient walks into my clinic and I take the history. And I have a little whiteboard in my office. What I do is I list out all the underlying causes of insomnia. Then what I do is I try to rule it out with them. And why do I do it is because that gives a little confidence in the person, right? Okay, when I start kind of erasing all the underlying causes that doesn't apply to the person, I can see the little light in their eyes. They feel happy. Look, at least I don't have any major problem. The reason is a lot of insomnia is related to anxiety, right? When you don't sleep a few nights, you start to feel very anxious about it. That sleep related anxiety in itself can further affect your sleep. We call it
Hmm.
anticipatory anxiety about sleep. So that's the reason I try to rule it out with the person, all the underlying causes. We'll talk about it in a minute, can list out all the causes. So that you yourself can do a basic screening. But some people may need to see a sleep specialist, and sometimes we do what is called a polysomnography, um, a sleep study. And nowadays we get a lot of Fitbits and wearable devices which can track and monitor your sleep and all that. All those things will definitely give a raw idea about how good or bad your sleep is. But to be accurate, we can do a PSG or a polysomnography.
Actually, I just realized that sleep is something that we cannot cover in one session, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time to understand sleep and sleeping patterns and the characteristics of sleeping, right? But to focus more on fat loss, right? There's a very interesting question what Suma is asking. a few of us love afternoon sleeping, right? Like, especially when you have a festival meal or when you eat a biryani, right? We all want to get that afternoon sleep. It's a luxury for a lot of them, right? So, what is your take on that? Is it actually okay to take a nap, or is it not at all good, especially for people who are trying to lose weight? What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, a very interesting question. Wherever I go and talk about sleep, they do ask me this question: what do you think about afternoon naps? Look, my basic principle is, is simple, very simple principle. The afternoon sleep is only for people who can sleep well in the night because they can afford to. If your night sleep is already disrupted, your afternoon sleep will further disrupt it. Maybe just a few minutes ago, we talked about biological clock and the circadian rhythm, right? So there has to
Mm-hmm.
be a rhythm, right? So afternoon sleep, I'll tell you why. Afternoon sleep, is very different to the night sleep. 15 minutes of nap in the afternoon is almost equivalent to 1 hour of night sleep.
Wow.
That is because, yeah, yeah. That is because in the night we have a set pattern of sleep. We call them sleep cycles. Each cycle will last for about 90 minutes. And when we sleep and wake up in the morning, we go through about 4 to 6 sleep cycles.
Correct.
But the same thing doesn't happen in the day. In the daytime, when you sleep, you straight away go into what we call REM sleep, which is very refreshing. And to get to the first REM sleep in the night, it takes about 90 minutes or 70 to
Oh,
90 minutes. In the day, it's done. So that's why I follow this principle. Afternoon sleep is only for people who can sleep well in the night. If your night sleep is already disrupted, try not to sleep in the afternoon. Now, occasional nap when you have the biryani you talked about is fine, but but I'm not. I'm here referring to someone who sleeps regularly in the afternoon. A lot of people tell me, look, doctor, I'm not getting sleep in the night. What do I do? I have to catch up on my sleep. I understand. I understand it's very frustrating when you don't get night sleep, but biological clock usually takes about 2 weeks to reset itself. So that 2 weeks, if you're a little patient and avoid daytime sleep, you're likely to sleep better in the night.
correct. And when you mention about REM, right, which is where the sleep is actually effectively working to repair and prepare your body, and you said each lasts for about 90 minutes, an hour and a half.
Mhm.
What is the basic amount of, I mean, what's the basic REM cycles that one needs on a daily basis? You said at least 5 cycles, right? Sometimes the deep sleep can be for like about 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, something like that. What is the minimum REM cycle that a man requires for a fully, I mean, like for efficient functioning?
Yeah. Look, I can give the exact number, but I don't want anyone to start panicking if they're not having enough REM because please understand this is not under our control. I can't choose whether I go into REM sleep or NREM sleep, right? It's how it occurs, how the brain functions. So yeah, normally about 20% is the REM sleep we all require. But remember, I mentioned about the sleep cycle earlier that we have about 4 to 6 sleep cycles. The REM sleep, there is a proportion of REM sleep in each of those cycles. But the difference is, when we go into the sleep in the night, we start off with the sleep cycle. The proportion of REM in the first cycle is very small. The second cycle, REM sleep increases a little. Third cycle, it increases further. So the REM sleep is at least is longest in the last cycle we have in the mornings. So that's when we tend to remember our dreams. There's a traditional saying in India that early morning dreams come true, right? But that's I don't know if that's a
Is that
fact or not.
true?
Well, I was going to answer that. I don't know how true
Because
it's
I
fact
won a
or
day before yesterday, I won $1 million when I was doing.
yeah. The thing is, it's just that the morning sleep you tend to remember a lot because REM proportion of sleep is quite long in the mornings. So we just tend to remember the morning dreams. That's all. If amongst those 1 million dreams, even if one dream comes true, then we believe the morning dreams come true, and we tend to forget the rest of the dreams which did not come true. So, but we probably dream the entire night, but we only remember the dreams dreamt in REM sleep. The REM sleep is longer in the morning, so we tend to remember it.
Okay, I see more questions popping up, so we'll try and solve all of them. There are a couple of questions on the similar line, so I'm kind of grouping it. Like a lot of people have this problem where they're extremely stressed and they can't fall asleep, right? So, what can one do to get over the stress and to get into the cycle of sleeping?
Mm. Look, it's a
Uh,
very, yeah,
yeah, please go ahead.
yeah. Look, There's a very kind of interesting relation between the stress, the sleep, and our including our body weight and our performance. Right? They are all very closely linked. So it's extremely important that we manage our stress to get a good night's sleep, and that also helps in maintaining our physical health, including our weight and also our performance, immunity, and interpersonal issues and so on. So if you are stressed out, it's important that we manage manage our stress in isolation. We try to understand why we are stressed out. So I don't know, people maybe might be going through some specific stress in their family or financial issues, work, career, or maybe they are clinically quite depressed or anxious. If that is the case, that needs to be addressed. But it's important for people to become a lot more mindful about their anxiety levels and stress levels during sleep. So what I
So
mean by
how do you separate that anxiety, which is basically troubling my sleep? How do you separate it and just fall asleep like this? How is it
yeah,
possible?
yeah.
How can one do it?
Yeah, a lot of people, what they try and do is they try to fight their thoughts or control it or suppress it or react. They try to get rid of the thoughts, but that doesn't work because please understand, thoughts and emotions are extremely automatic. They're very obsessional in nature, rather, which means the more you don't want to experience it, the more it comes. Particularly in the night when it's very quiet, everybody is asleep. And now you don't want to think about certain stressful issues here and that in your life. Only those things keep popping up, right? So
Yeah.
that's how they are. They're very obsessional in nature. I think the best thing is not to control it, not to suppress it, but to be mindful about it and not give significance. So what I mean by that is that actually go to bed. Two things you need to do to be precise. Number one, how do you deal with thoughts, right? How do you deal with the thoughts? You have to follow these principles of mindfulness, which is basically becoming aware of your thoughts. Watch those thoughts flowing like a river in front of you, or as if you're watching a movie, right? Just look at them very objectively. You notice these thoughts are popping up automatically. When you
Mhm.
notice it, you tell yourself, you know what, let them be. It's okay. And what do I do? Let me try and not give any significance to it. Let it just flow. It's like you're trying to read a book in front of a flowing river. Yeah, the river may become very noisy at times or become very muddy at times. As long as you just tell yourself, I'm here to read a book, I just let the river be. So you just let it flow. That way, if you don't give significance by being mindful, your thoughts are going to lose significance and you should be able to distract yourself. And number two, a lot of people have this anticipatory anxiety about sleep. They keep worrying, oh, I'm not sleeping, I'm not sleeping, I'm not sleeping. The anticipatory anxiety in itself will bring down your sleep. So the best thing is when you go to bed, tell yourself, you know what, I don't care or I don't mind how much sleep I get tonight. If I get 6 hours or 8 hours, I'm happy. If I get only 1 hour, 2 hours, yes, it's not great, it's not ideal, but I'm okay with it. Why should I be okay with it? Because the following day I might be going through some grogginess, tiredness, lethargy, and that's it. It's not a major disaster. I can manage it. So if you tell your mind, I'm okay to manage the minor consequences of not sleeping for a day or two. Actually, the anticipatory anxiety comes down, and you should be able to sleep better and better. The idea is to bring down your anticipatory anxiety. So if you tell yourself, I don't care how much I sleep, I'm okay with whatever sleep I get, you are likely to sleep better. But if you get desperate,
Basically, coming in terms with your sleep.
absolutely, I think that actually helps you to sleep better. If you keep desperate, getting desperate about sleep, it gets further, deteriorated.
So, I mean, this is very important that we spoke. So, I'm going to articulate it again and summarize what we spoke. First, let the thoughts come, observe the thoughts, be aware of what the thoughts are,
Correct.
and slowly let it flow like a river,
Yes,
and automatically you will fall asleep.
correct.
That is
And
the
not
first no.
absolute, not give conscious significance to the thought. Yes, it's there in front of you. You decide not to give conscious significance. That's
And
right.
second, being anxious about not falling asleep is actually the biggest trouble when you want to fall asleep.
That's
So
right.
coming in terms and just letting yourself lie will help is what you're trying to say. So I have another set of questions from Shruti, Kavya, and various other people. And even this is a conflict between me and my wife because my wife is always jealous of me. The minute I put my head on the pillow, I just fall asleep, right? And she is struggling watching something, and she has to knock herself off to sleep. And she's like, every time when I wake up every morning, I'm so jealous. How can you fall asleep so much? I was talking something, it was like fast asleep. So there are a lot of people who actually want to sleep by around 10, 10:30. They go to bed, but somewhat they can't fall asleep till 12, 12:31. That's what Kavya and Shruti and everybody are asking. So how can one practice the art of just sleeping as soon as they hit the bed? How is it possible?
Yeah. First of all, whenever you're not able to sleep well or you're not able to fall asleep as soon as you hit the bed, you need to take a step back and set your expectations and perceptions right. So what I mean by that, I do this with every patient I see. Now, what happens many times, people will be getting a lot of sleep, adequate sleep the body requires, but they are not satisfied. So the basic questions you need to ask yourself is, how long are you sleeping? Right? Sometimes you may go to bed at 10 o'clock, but maybe let's say you get sleep at actually 12 midnight. But what time are you waking up in the morning? What's your sleep cycle like? What's your pattern like? So how much sleep are you getting in 24-hour cycle? Many people would be getting easily 8 9 hours of sleep, but they still have this unrealistic expectation of going to bed at 10 o'clock and falling off asleep. The first thing is correct your expectations and perceptions. So we'll talk about the duration you require now because that is very very relevant. So you need to know that a working age adult population, I guess most of the audience here are working age adult population, which means basically from
25 to 44.
yeah 25 to 55 or something. So they require about 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Yeah, of course there will be outliers, which means some people consistently sleep for more than 8 hours and will still be functioning perfectly well, and some people actually sleep consistently less than 6 hours as well and still be functioning perfectly well. Okay, we call them outliers. That's not the norm, but they are functioning perfectly well. But 6 to 8 hours is normal requirement. Now, with that 6 to 8 hours, you also need to take into consideration whether you have any naps in the afternoon, right? Whether you wake up late in the morning. So all those things actually counts. So if you're having little naps in the afternoon and maybe push your wake up time sometime, all those counts. So if those things are happening, then you can't fall off asleep as soon as you go to bed at 10 o'clock. That's number one. The pattern. Number two is, of course, we just spoke 2 minutes ago, is about thoughts. How do you deal with whatever ruminating thoughts in the night or any stresses you're going through? Usually, that's what keeps people awake in the night when they go to bed. They can't fall asleep. They start ruminating about what's going on in their life or stresses they're dealing with. So, dealing with the thoughts, dealing with the sleep pattern and the timings are two important aspects. And of course, like it promotes it's about regular exercise and keeping your physical health fit,
Exactly.
extremely important.
I was coming there. I'm not a doctor, but something that has helped me to catch up on sleep because I'm not a natural sleeper. I have to force myself to sleep because I worked in a radio station for like about 6 years. So, and I was doing the breakfast show at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So there's an alarm clock in my mind. No matter what, 5:30 in the morning, I just wake up once.
Yeah.
And then I realize, okay, I'm not doing that show anymore, and I go back to sleep, right? So I have a tendency to wake up, and if I see light, I wake up. If I see, if I peep through the window, if it's not dark, then my mind tells me, okay, I have to, kind of get up now. It's morning.
Right.
So, and I love my mornings as well.
Right. Right.
So one thing that really helped me is exercising.
Yeah.
And when you have a hard work, when you work hard and you hit the bed, you have to do the same thing tomorrow. So it's important that you are functioning 100%, right? So I catch up on my sleep and somehow I fall asleep. But there was a bad habit that I developed. To fall asleep, I had to watch something,
Ah,
especially like something on my mobile, like a
right.
series or some YouTube videos or something like that. I used
Right.
to do this, but that digital impression before you sleep did cause some kind of damage.
Yeah.
My eyes used to feel really stressed out and stuff like that. So, what do you have to tell people who has or developing a habit which will lead you to sleep? Basically, now I read books.
Yeah.
Reading is not, I'm not quite natural. So if I start reading, I'll fall asleep no matter day or night. So now I've okay, that's like a medicine for me, right? So I use that to sleep. What else can we develop as a habit which will lead us to sleep?
Yeah. I think it's a very good point you mentioned. Yeah. Let's talk about what to do and what not to do when if you need to get into sleep quickly. So of course, the winding down is extremely important. You can't just if you're busy doing some important stuff or attending some important meeting, you can't just switch off and just go to bed, right? So you have to have some wind down time if possible, where you can switch off everything. Some people use this technique of writing it down. So what they basically do is, whatever running through their mind, they put it on a piece of paper. Whatever activities they need to complete the following day or what happened today. So when you put it on a piece of paper, there's some closure to that thought. It is some closure to that thought, so you can sleep peacefully. If not, you start ruminating about it. So that's number one. Bringing in closure to your thoughts at work and have a wind down routine. Yeah, just try to relax, create an environment which is conducive for sleep. The dimming the light and try not to use your gadgets. Of course, you can use your gadgets until you decide to go to bed. After you decide, then switch it off. There's no second way about it. You cannot watch series or social media things in the bed. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people might be using it to get to sleep. They may be even being successful in doing that, but eventually it will come back and haunt you. Eventually, the constant stimulation of brain when you're trying to actually wind down, you will end up having a lot of anxiety symptoms later in their life. So it's going to be really hard for those people to get.
It's not the best practice, is what you're trying to say.
Definitely not. So wind down routine and also switching off your thoughts and reading a book is a good thing, right? Reading from a book is probably the only thing you should do if you don't get sleep. You don't have to keep tossing and turning in the bed. Don't fight with your sleep. Try your best. If you're not getting sleep, come out of the bed, switch on a dim light and read from a book. I always tell people, like you just said, even if you pick up some old textbook from your college, uh, that's fine. You might fall asleep very easily, right?
No,
Boring.
actually, I have developed a habit of reading because of this, and
Okay.
I'm more of a listener, and I watch a lot to to update my knowledge. But now reading is so beautiful that I have
Okay.
picked it up because of this. But we are talking today mostly with respect to fat loss and how sleep
Hmm.
affects fat loss, right? That's it's the core intent of this conversation. There's a very important question that someone RN has asked. Um, does evening exercise contribute to disturbed sleep? This is my question, as because when you exercise, you activate everything,
Yeah.
and it might keep you really active for a long time. I've observed this as well. So, do you think it is just my thoughts, or does it actually lead you towards disturbed sleep, working out in the evenings?
No, definitely. Evening exercise is generally not advisable, particularly for those stimulating, exercises, because what happens, you're just pushing your noradrenaline, right? You're stimulating your brain, so obviously that's against your sleep. There are sleep promoting neurotransmitters in the brain, and there are wakefulness promoters and
Mm,
neurotransmitters in the brain. There are two categories.
mm,
So the one thing you're activating when you're exercising is the
mm,
wakefulness promoter.
mm,
Noradrenaline is a neurotransmitter in the brain, which is released when you exercise, right? Because you want to stimulate yourself. So that keeps you awake. So late evening exercises is generally not advisable. I know some people are okay with it. Like I said, underneath all this, there is always this adaptability a human mind has, a human body has. But general principle, late night exercise is not advisable at all. It doesn't have a stimulating effect. On
and and I always keep talking to our trainers like Shway, Rahul, and all of them suggest working out in the morning because
Yes,
one, it'll give you a fresh energy for
absolutely.
the entire day. It'll help you have a cycle where you can knock yourself out to sleep like you're tired, and obviously the body wants to sleep, and that's a great way to sleep. Fall asleep is what they say. But Sahana over here is asking me a question that I'm 55. I
Right.
just totally lost sleep 5 years ago, 5 years back. And my job is not a desk job. It involves a lot of walking around, like a lot of physical activity. So,
Right.
how can people like Sahana correct their sleeping pattern? Or, as you rightly said, we have to diagnose or identify the problem.
Underlying cause. Yeah.
Is there a DIY, do it yourself? If there is, how do we do it?
Okay. Let me just quickly list out the causes of insomnia for you. If you have a piece of paper, you can note it down, and then and just you just do a little bit of screening for yourself. There are only about 8 causes of insomnia, actually, to be precise. So one of them will apply to you. And by the way, in the same person, sometimes 2 or 3 factors may apply because it can be multifactorial, right? So factor number one is always psychological. So 70 to 80% of people who don't sleep well will have some psychological issue. If not primary, it can be secondary. And what I mean by that is, something may have set off their sleep problem, but what maintains their sleep problem could be psychological. So it can range from simple stress at work or family to some major psychological conditions like anxiety, depression, or even OCD, psychosis, and all that. The psychological cause, number one, right? So number two, physiological, something to do with your body, physiological. Look, ranging from simple acidity, like a reflux, right? When you sleep, some people have acidity issues, right? Simple acidity or sometimes pains or migraine, headache, to diabetes or hypertension, thyroid, vitamin deficiencies, iron deficiencies. Uh, all this can affect your sleep in various ways. Some people may have restless leg syndrome. You may have heard about people having little movement problems and all that. So that's why I'm trying to say that we need, let's identify the cause and treat the cause. So psychological, then physiological. Then thirdly, sleep apnea. Look, sleep apnea has become an extremely important cause of insomnia, and it's a lot more relevant for people who are trying to lose weight, right? Because sleep and sleep apnea or the obesity and overweight have a very unique relationship.
Okay.
Bad sleep, make you put on weight. You put on weight, and it further worsens your sleep. So they have a very cyclical relationship, right? So now sleep apnea, just to briefly mention, is a respiratory condition. It's what happens there in sleep apnea is you may have heard about people, commenting about snoring or complaining about snoring and all. So that's basically it. Snoring is a manifestation of sleep apnea. So if you hear some people snoring heavily or even having small breathing difficulties in the night, and actually make that sound, just listen to this. Some people may have this particular pattern in the night, like they do this and they start breathing again. They actually pause for a split second and they continue to breathe. It's not necessarily snoring, but they have a little pauses in breathing in the night. So these, what it means is basically sleep apnea. Now what's happening there is some of the neck muscles and it's actually falling back when they're asleep, particularly in one stage of sleep called REM, where there's muscle relaxation happening and blocking the airway. When it blocks the airway partially or fully, what we hear is snoring. But what happens inside is much more dangerous. Much more dangerous because air pressure goes down, oxygen concentration goes down, heart tends to panic, BP goes up, blood pressure goes up, and heart rate goes up as well. People can have heart attack in the night due to sleep apnea. It can be very fatal. You may have heard about a lot of people going to bed and not waking up in the morning at all. What likely may have happened is this sleep apnea causing heart attacks, right? Anyway, I just wanted you to be aware because I'm mentioning all the causes. I mentioned psychological, physical, sleep apnea. I put it as a separate category because it's a huge thing and that has to be dealt with very diligently once we identify and investigate it. Apart from that, people may have addiction issues where people with excessive smoking or drinking or addicted to any other substances, it also disrupts their sleep cycle. There's also this category called parasomnia. Parasomnia is basically something abnormal happening when you're asleep. Like you may have heard about people having nightmares, night terrors, or sleep talking, sleepwalking, or even teeth grinding, or like bruxism, right? Or restless legs, and so on, right? And sometimes we already talked about circadian rhythm disorder. That's one of the cause of insomnia, biological clock related issues. Environmental causes one thing, where sometimes it could be as simple as something going wrong in the environment. It could be something to do with the light. Maybe there's excessive light disrupting your sleep, or temperature of the room, or the type of the bed. Just the environmental issues, or someone snoring next to you. So we don't know. So just the environmental issues, and there's also what we call is sleep state misperception, which I briefly mentioned earlier, which basically means, look, sometimes people may be getting whatever amount of sleep they need, right, for the body, but the mind is never satisfied. We call this sleep state misperception. This particularly happens in elderly people. So that's something we need to rule out. So we list out all these causes and try to rule out what applies to you, what doesn't apply to you, and rule it out one by one. Once we identify the causes, what I do is have a conversation with people. Look, let's see what we can do about it. Is it purely psychological? Let's see what we can do about it. Is it psychological plus sleep apnea? Let's address both. So the basic principle, you can do your own screening, basic screening about these causes, and then see if you need to see a sleep specialist for further assessment and treatment.
I mean, that was quite extensive. You covered a lot of sleep issues in one go, and but I personally feel there are many other problems basically that needs to be addressed, and the only way to do it is to go and see a specialist, because all we work hard, I mean, we all work hard to get that good sleep, good food, right? If the basics are not right, obviously you don't feel great in your mind. And I think it's very, very important that we don't ignore these things and consult a specialist, a near someone who is close by to your house
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well, or be or people like Dr. Satish. You're right now, your clinic is at Yelahanka, right? If I'm
Yeah.
not wrong,
I've
Yelahanka.
practiced at people to hospitals in Yelahanka and Yeshwanthpur in Bangalore. Yeah, that's right.
So there are some other questions. It
Yeah.
looks, I mean, Sahana has a question. Maybe you can do a direct reply to that a little later once we finish the talk. But Manish is having a very good question. If do's and don'ts before we hit the bed, we already spoke about it. And how many hours should a 10-year-old kid sleep?
Yeah, no, very good question. I wanted to address this earlier when I talked about duration. Let's talk about the sleep duration. Uh, I'm sure you all know how long would a newborn baby, a baby just born today, how long would it sleep? We all know that. Any guess tonight? How long would a newborn baby sleep?
I think because I am seeing somebody. I mean, my cousin had a baby, so at
Okay,
least like about 13 to 15 hours, if I'm not wrong.
it's little more than that. It's in first day. I'm talking about only first day. First day
Mhm.
it will be about 16 to 20 hours actually.
My
So
God.
16 to 20
Oh,
hours.
that's why they refer saying sleep like a baby.
Yes. So what happened the second day, all right,
Uh-huh.
the duration comes down a little. A week
Mhm.
after it comes down further. Month later it comes down further. Year later it comes down further. So basically what I'm trying to say is that as we grow older, our sleep duration keeps coming down. From 16 to 20 hours on the first day of baby is born, it keeps coming down gradually. It doesn't go up at all. It keeps coming down. If you have any elderly people at home who are 70 plus, maybe naturally, physiologically, their sleep duration is only 4 to 5 hours. That's all they need. That's all they can achieve actually. Whether they're happy about it or not is a different question. Most of the elderly people are not happy about it. I see a lot of elderly people coming to my clinic, doctor, I'm not getting sleep. When I inquire and investigate, they're getting 5 hours of sleep, which is good enough for them. That's a normal duration given the physiological thing. So there is an age-related decline in all of us. So that we need to understand before we set our expectations right.
That's great. And talking about fat loss again, because there are a lot of people who are fitness enthusiasts, right?
Yeah.
And they want to understand how is the fat broken and how do they lose calories when they're sleeping. Can you explain a bit about this?
Look, it's not like when, of course, a lot of metabolism activities will be happening when you're particularly in deep sleep. Like I mentioned, the best metabolism happens and all that. But what you need to understand is, if you don't sleep well, right, the mechanism of how the cholesterol levels actually goes up when you don't sleep well, right? So it's not that when you're having deep sleep, you actually lose weight, right? It's more likely the other way around. When you don't sleep well, you're likely to put on weight. Right?
Correct.
Like I already mentioned, insomnia and weight have a very unique relationship. When you don't sleep well, like I already mentioned, of course, one is the metabolic aspects of things where people having this glucose intolerance and the glucose levels can go up, the cholesterol deposit happens, and the other thing is, like I mentioned earlier, when the oxygen concentration levels vary when you don't have adequate sleep in the night, so that leads to a lot of inflammatory activities of the blood vessels, which will lead to a lot of fat deposits in the blood vessels. So, which will again help, increase the risk of your cardiovascular heart disease and all that. So, don't sleep well, you are likely to put on weight.
Actually, I wanted to explain. I had taken up a project
Sure.
and I was leading it, and I had to lead from the front. So morning till evening, you have to be there, right? And I was addicted to fitness. I had to work out every day. If not, I cannot sleep.
Right.
That's bothering me, right? So I was in a situation like this. So I made sure that I worked out every day for an hour and a half,
Right.
including my stretches and all those stuff. And I worked throughout the day. Yet, and I ate well at the right time. Yet, after like about 10 or 12 days, there was no difference in my weight. In fact, I had gained about a kilo or two. And I didn't understand why this was happening. And a good friend of mine he suggested, I think there is a problem with your sleep.
Yeah, yeah,
Because, to very simply put it across, whatever you're doing today is not being repaired. So the body is not prepared to burn that tomorrow. And you're adding more stress,
more stress.
more task for your body to perform. And that's
That's
the reason why you're not doing. Just do one thing, don't work out for a day or two.
get
Switch
good
off
sleep.
yourself from everything, get a good sleep.
Yes,
And when I did that, in 2 days, I could see my weight started decreasing again. So I think it's extremely important to have a cycle when you want to lose weight, have a pattern, a
yes,
discipline, so that and and as you said, overthinking is one of the reasons why a lot of us don't fall asleep. So live by the day and just take it easy as and when it comes is what one of my mantras. I'm just sharing it because it did help me. It might help
right.
others too. Yeah. I have some more questions here. But with respect to fitness, again, what is an ideal exercise duration that will help us to hit the bed? Like, say, for example, if you work out for like about 20 minutes or 20 minutes of walking or 1 hour of intense workout, what is that ideal workout time that will help us to, develop a sleeping cycle? Is there anything like that?
Normally, we say at least about 30 to 45 minutes as a minimum, bare minimum, every
Mhm.
day. So even the evidence have shown that people who exercise for at least 30 to 45 minutes, any exercise that doesn't matter whether you run or have brisk walk or you hit the gym. So
Mhm.
it doesn't matter or you have rigorous dance or whatever. So that will definitely add a lot of value to your sleep. So that physiologically, and of
Mhm.
course, parallelly, holistically dealing with all these psychological aspects and sleep hygiene practices we talked about. So all those practices are also equally important.
That's great. And another interesting question here. When is pranayama breathing exercises recommended during the day? I mean, at which part of the day pranayama becomes more effective is what they're asking.
Pranayama, I think you can do it any time of the day. I think evenings it's also fun because this is actually calming your mind down. You're trying to become very mindful of your breathing, and that will create an environment of it, conducive for sleep. So it can be done in the night as well. I was only referring to the stimulating exercises earlier, which is not kind of indicated late in the evenings. But
Mm.
pranayama, you can certain breathing exercises, meditation, we can certainly do in the evenings as well. So I think mornings also is fine, but I think any time of the day, but it might help with your sleep.
I mean, something very interesting. Aran is asking. Geeta says, in fact, evening workout helps me sleep better. Is that okay? Is
Right.
it normal?
Like I told you already, when we talk about this contraindication, we did say a lot of people say what you said, Geeta, that evening exercise actually helps them sleep. But I only mentioned that yes, there are always outliers, but the general principle is not exercise late in the evening. Look, if you want to say that you are not sleeping well, then that probably would be the first thing I would have said. Look, don't exercise in the night. Look, please understand, sleep is a very complex psychophysiological system. This is the first sentence I told you. It is not just one, having exercise or not having exercise in the evening will help or not help. If there are other aspects of your life is perfectly going well, all the physiological, psychological, and everything else I mentioned, yeah, some evening exercises will not disturb your sleep. But in many people, if there are other challenges in life about getting good sleep and they're exercising in the evening as well, amongst all the other sleep hygiene techniques, we tell them don't exercise in the night. So, yeah,
And one more interesting question by Madhu Smita. Does afternoon naps, um, do they, um, I mean, do you add weight when you sleep in the afternoons? Do you put on weight?
it doesn't work that straightforward. But like I said, of course, less sleep will make you put on weight, and also sometimes more sleep, right? More sleep also. That's basically
There's a
because of
question there.
lethargy. Yeah, the more sleep is basically because your sedentary lifestyle and lethargy, which can make you put on weight rather than just the afternoon sleep alone.
And people, a lot of them, after they wake up, right, they don't feel fresh. So is there anything that we can do it on our own, or should we consult a doctor for such kind of problems?
Yeah, like I already mentioned, now many people may not feel fresh because they may not be having adequate sleep. Many people may be appearing to be sleeping through the night, but they don't feel refreshed because certain stages of sleep may not be adequate at all, right? Like I told you, the REM, NREM sleep. Actually, the deep sleep is referred as NREM sleep. Within that NREM, we have about 3 stages. The third stage is called NREM. That's again about 20%. A lot of people miss out on that NREM sleep for various reasons. So they may not feel refreshed at all in the morning, particularly people with sleep apnea, people who have snoring problems. We typically say that when they wake up in the morning, they don't feel fresh at all. But they would have appear to be sleeping through the night, but they don't feel refreshed because they don't go into deep sleep so much.
Vaishali is asking, how do you define sleeping well? I think we've spoken about it a lot, but correct me if I'm wrong, doctor. Sleeping well is catching up good 6 to 8 hours of sleep, where when you wake up, you feel refreshed and you're prepared to face the day. That's what is sleeping well. If you want to add something, please feel free.
So basically, you just look at your functioning. That's all. If you're functioning well through the day with a good level of energy, motivation, mood, functioning, you're managing things very energetically, and like you said, feeling refreshed in the morning. That's all. To try not to worry too much about how long am I sleeping, am I getting REM, am I getting an REM, and all that. Functioning well, refreshed feeling in the morning, you're doing well. Don't worry. Even if you're sleeping 5 hours, doesn't matter.
Okay, we are headed towards the last part of the show. We have like about 10 minutes. So if there are any questions, I would like to take it for the next. We are open for the next 5 minutes. And at the same time, doctor, they always say when you're stressed out, when you're emotional, when you're really not in a great mood, or when you're anxious, they say sleep it off. You will feel better. And actually, sleeping over a lot of thoughts gives you clarity the next day. On how do you, what can you, how do you define this relationship? Like, again, your mental health and sleep goes hand in hand, right? So, what's your piece of advice? How do we tackle this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We say that sleep is the best antidepressant, right? So
Okay.
sleep off very well for a couple of nights. A lot of your depressive symptoms, mood symptoms do get better. So what basically you need to understand is all of us have our own strengths and our own limitations within our personality. All of us, but obviously we all will have completely different set of strengths and limitations because we all come from different background, different upbringing, experience, genes, and all that. Now, whenever things go wrong, or whenever we are under some kind of stress, our weaknesses become a lot more active, and we lose control on our thoughts, and so automatically a lot of negative thoughts, negative feelings will keep popping up when we are under stress. And it all seems so real, it even starts affecting our feelings, behavior, including sleep. So when we get into this dysfunctional vicious cycle, it's like a little chakravyuha. You get trapped in that negative thoughts, feelings, behavior, bad sleep, and all that. So somewhere we have to break this cycle. And the best way is sleep. If you are able to get into some good night's sleep, you have what I call it, you get into what we refer as from a biased view to a balanced view. When you are not sleeping well, your mind is very biased. It only focuses on what's not working well in your life. It focuses only on the negative aspects of life, right? Because you're so stressed out, mind dominates about negativity. But have good sleep, you're in good state of mind. You get a balanced view. You look at both negative and positive and see what action you need to take. So yeah, a good sleep is the best activity.
And with respect to eating food, ideal time to eat food in your dinner time, and what is the gap that you need to have after you eat and before you sleep? What is the ideal gap that we should have?
So food and sleep also have a very important relationship. We need to be aware. Of course, first thing to start with is the time between the last meal and the sleep. Ideally, it's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, right?
Okay.
That's the time you need, 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And of course, try and avoid heavy meal in the night. Try and avoid, like too spicy or oily food and all that in the night. And what might help is, drinking a glass of warm milk or eat a little banana before you go to bed. In our age-old Indian tradition of eating a banana, we encourage children to have milk in the night because those items will have the serotonin and melatonin, which will actually help you sleep better. So yeah, that's the main thing.
And this applies to me as well. Sometimes I pretend like I'm a 10-year-old who's hyperactive. And any tips to improve sleeping patterns of this 10-year-old?
Sleeping patterns of 10-year-old.
Yeah. Extremely hyperactive 10-year-old kid.
Look, like I already said, of course, children will be hyperactive. They'll be very inquisitive, wanting to explore many things. It doesn't matter what time of the day, right? So it's important for parents to kind of, create an environment conducive for sleep. Like we talked about winding down pattern for ourselves, we have to create the same for children. Switching off, dimming the lights and switching off the gadgets, and everybody becomes very quiet. Maybe, maybe telling them, sharing a story with them or some soothing music, and not talk about any stimulating things or playing a game or anything like that. So all those things are extremely important to wind down children and set a pattern of the sleeping time and wake up time. That also sets the biological clock. Even if a child is very hyperactive, the clock hits and then they have to, sleep. So in fact, in children, it's much easier to set it up because as we grow, we have lots of other things to worry about. So we start ruminating. Children don't tend to do that. They can switch off easily.
That's great. Last couple of questions. I mean, the chat box is buzzing here. Geeta, Manish, Aaron, Sahana, everybody's actively talking about a lot of things. And Geeta says turmeric milk helps her sleep well. It has worked
Yeah.
for her. Yeah, actually, like doctor said, there is certain amount of melatonin and serotonin in banana and milk. So it will kind
Yeah.
of complement towards a good sleep. And Debesh has a question
Yeah.
that is about sleep anxiety, right? And how to manage anxiety or panic related problems that hamper the sleep is what he's asking.
Yeah. Sure. So no, we did speak about it 2 minutes ago, right? About the anxiety. One, the question is whether are you experiencing like a generalized anxiety problem in the larger context of your mental health, and if sleep problem is just one of the manifestation, or your anxiety is only related to sleep. A lot of people have only sleep related anxiety. Couple of nights they don't sleep well, they develop this anticipatory anxiety. Oh, will I sleep well or not tonight? If I don't sleep well, how will I manage the following day? So we call it anticipatory anxiety about sleep, anxiety in anticipation. So that if it's only related to sleep, of course, we follow all the wind down routines and the managing your thoughts and emotions in the night when you go to bed and all that. That certainly will help, following all the sleep hygiene, managing your thoughts and all that. But if it's in the larger context of your, anxiety, like somebody having generalized anxiety disorder or other social phobias or depression, then we need to go and treat that problem, underlying problem. Then sleep will obviously, as a consequence, will definitely get better and better. So the basic
So,
principle is we don't, sorry, just the last bit, it doesn't have to be medication all the time. The medication is prescribed only for severe forms of anxiety or insomnia, only for a short term. But it's mainly following the principles of cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, where we try and convert that dysfunctional negative cycle I mentioned 2 minutes ago of thoughts, feelings, and behavior into a positive cycle. How do you mindfully manage it? With various techniques and skills like thought challenging, worry time, mindfulness exercises, desensitization, and so on.
that's great. I mean that was very helpful actually because I know a lot of people who suffer from sleep anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And I also want to underline that some days, every day is not the same day, right? You might not fall asleep, and it's okay, right? We have to come in terms with
Absolutely.
that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Thinking about it will make you more sleepless, is what I feel. And
Sorry, just one thing, particularly change of place, you're traveling, you're going to go to different places. Obviously your clock is likely to get little disrupted, but you should be just be okay with it. So the body will adapt, will get back to your normal rhythm.
and Aishwarya has a very interesting question. How does sunlight or not getting enough sunlight affect sleep? And what is the right time to get sunlight for better sleep?
Morning, early morning. Look, there are two ways of looking at it. One from the melatonin point of view, exposing yourself to sunlight will actually suppress your melatonin in the morning, which is a good thing, right? Suppression of melatonin is very important so that you feel lively and active, right? So having melatonin will you continue to feel a little groggy, a little tired and sleepy and all that. That's number one. Of course, we all know the importance of sunlight and the vitamin D and all that, which will help our metabolism and various other aspects. So that context as well, definitely. Early morning sunlight exposure is best because of course later in the day, all the UV light and direct exposure to sunlight may have other consequences. So early morning sunlight. Sunlight is very important for melatonin suppression. That's a problem in many European countries where they hardly see sunlight many times. So they may end up what we call seasonal affective disorder. Many of them have high rates of depression when there is no sunlight, right? That's purely because they
Yeah,
continue
yeah.
scrolling.
Yeah, when I was in London, people go crazy when they see sun over there. Oh, it's a sunny day. Yeah, that's what. I mean, it's a blessing to see sunlight because there are months together where it's just clouds over there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are lucky to be in India and having lots of sunlight. So let's use it. Take
definitely.
advantage of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hope I think we have answered most of the questions in the chat box and definitely had a great interesting conversation with you. Is there a way if someone wants to reach out to you, your email ID if you want to share?
Yeah, I can put it on the chat box.
Yeah, sure. So that people who have some personal questions, if they don't wish to put it on the chat box or to be addressed over here,
Yeah,
they
no
can
problem.
feel free to contact you. And I think it was really, really informative. And from today onwards, I know how to handle my sleep and obviously how to catch up on my sleep. But one thing what I have realized is that it takes you to correct all these issues, and you have to make up your mind to basically work towards that good sleep.
Yeah,
And if you're just thinking about it and not taking actions, definitely don't see any great results. You have to take actions towards it by basically calming down, stop overthinking, being much more relaxed, and having a nice hobby like listening to music on a very low volume, reading a book before you sleep. Where your concentration is towards that and not some negative thoughts that is
yeah,
basically tickling your mind and making your mind monkey, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's very, very important. And you said quickly you have a presentation that you want to show to people. If
If
it
you
is
have
like about
time,
5 minutes,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
5 minutes I can cover it. Yeah, just let me
So
know.
it's a very interesting presentation what doctor
It
wanted to share. So I think people should see that, and it'll be much more informative and helpful, is what I feel. And Geeta, Madhusmita, everybody, they say it's a great session, and a lot of appreciation towards you, doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On that note, handing it over to you. We have a PPT where the doc will talk about the significance of sleeping, and after that, we'll be winding down the session. Thank
So
you so
we'll,
much, and over
yeah,
to you.
thank you. And I think it just summarizes what we already discussed so that you will kind of have some take home messages. You'll remember what we discussed and have some take home points. So I hope you can see my slides. Suppose.
Yes, yes, very much.
Just put it on this slide. Uh, make slide show right now. Yeah. Okay, great. So now sleep, as we already discussed, is something which is quite destigmatized, what I would say, which means basically we all feel comfortable talking about sleep. Unlike anxiety, depression, other psychological issues, sleep is something which you find in any kind of newspaper or magazine, at least one article about sleep. So it is that common. People easily talk about sleep, is what I'm trying to say here. So already told you it's an activity of the brain, by the brain, for the brain. It is very important to keep our optimal health, our performance, and a good quality of life. It increases our daytime alertness and our productivity. Like I already mentioned, what happens when we are asleep in the background is the growth happens, the repair, the regulation, the energy preservation. So lots of very important physiological activities happen. Particularly if you're young, you have a young child, you need to encourage them to sleep longer. And we talked about weight maintenance and sleep relationship. Good sleep will have a better chance of maintaining your weight better. Look, I put up this slide of some of the major disasters that have happened in the history of mankind, right? And the reason I put up these slides here is because these human disasters have been attributed to some human error, a human error which had resulted in significant disasters for generations. And this human error was further attributed to a person's sleep problem, right? So I'm just trying to highlight the magnitude of consequences of a sleep problem. Of course, that's not the case every day we see. If you don't sleep for a day or two, what we commonly see is this, right? You feel very groggy, irritable, you can't get out of the bed, your concentration gets affected, you get depressed and all that. So the consequences of poor sleep can be various. Physiologically, we highlighted it worsens pre-existing medical conditions, independent risk factor for heart disease, metabolic dysfunction, weakens your immune system, psychologically going through depression, anxiety, cognitive issues, like memory issues. A lot of people have memory issues as well. Social, we see people working in, driving heavy machinery working. They have a lot of accidents due to sleep problems, and we all know that major road highway accidents happen in the early hours of morning. That's again because of sleep problems. It even affects academic performance, social functioning, relationship, and all that. You can see the range of magnitude of problem related to poor sleep. So normal sleep we spoke about. I told you about the age-related decline, ranging from 60 to 20 hours in a newborn baby to 6 hours. 6 to 8 hours is the normal expected sleep in a working age adult population. Sleep latency. Latency is the time between you putting your head on the pillow to falling asleep. Is ideally should be 8 to 20 minutes. But yeah, in some people they may sleep much earlier than that. If it's taking beyond 20 minutes, then you could be suffering from insomnia and needs further investigation. Of course, hoping that you're not holding your mobile phone and chatting with someone on social media. So we spoke about 15 minutes of nap in the afternoon is equivalent to 1 hour of night sleep. So afternoon sleep is not advisable if your night sleep is already disrupted. So increasing tendency to sleep and diminished functioning is between 2 to 6 a.m. and 2 to 4 p.m. So this is the biological clock I was referring to. This is literally the clock, and this includes everything that the circadian rhythm manages. I wanted to focus on this melatonin secretion starts and the melatonin secretion stops time. As you can see, melatonin secretion starts maybe around 9 p.m. when it is completely dark, and it stops when it is around 7 a.m. when there is a lot of daylight. So melatonin, hope you remember, it's a very important sleep hormone. It induces our sleep, and it is released only in the night. So nature is still giving us a message that we should be sleeping well in the night as much as possible. There can be many disorders related to sleep. There can only be three components related to sleep. Either you sleep less or you sleep more or something abnormal happens to sleep. So these are some of the sleep disorders. We don't need to go into details. And what we do when we see a patient with sleep problems is take a comprehensive history, maybe sometimes use questionnaires and sleep diaries. Nowadays, a lot of you have wearable Fitbits and all that, which is very handy actually. We may have to do what is called sleep study. An overnight sleep study can be done at home as well to understand the sleep problem in a little more detail. Sometimes medication could be an issue affecting the sleep. If it's a psychological state, we encourage cognitive behavior therapy. Good sleep hygiene, lifestyle changes, and treating the underlying cause. The basic principle is treating the underlying cause. So sound sleep, a sound mind, get your sleep in order. And sleep hygiene tips, and this last slide. I highlighted enough about the time, right? We need to get our time in order. Your going to bed time and wake up time should be as much as possible fixed, irrespective of it's a weekend or weekday. Regular exercise of about 30 to 45 minutes, relaxation, yoga, meditation certainly helps. Avoid excessive coffee, tea, any kind of smoking, drinking. These can significantly affect sleep, particularly caffeine. We didn't address that in our talk, but yes, caffeine can significantly affect sleep. Environmental noise, light, temperature, just take care of them, make sure it's very conducive for sleep. Look at your food habits. We already highlighted what kind of food, how much you should eat, and what's the time duration between your last meal and sleep time. If you're on any medication, that could be potentially affecting the sleep. Take care of that. If you're having any underlying physical or psychiatric problems, that needs addressing as well. Restricted time in bed, we highlighted that. But if you're struggling to sleep, don't fight with your sleep. Don't keep tossing, turning. Just come out of the bed and read from a book. Activities in bed should be restricted, and of course, not using gadgets is very, very important. For two reasons: one, the backlit gadgets have the particular wavelength of light. We call it blue light. It does stimulate your brain. And secondly, the content of what you actually do with the gadget also stimulates. And expectation, more than anything, get your expectations and perceptions right. How much sleep is ideal for you? Are you functioning very well during the day, irrespective of how much you sleep? If that is the case, then don't worry too much.
Okay. And don't watch a horror movie before you hit
it. So I'll stop it here. Thank you very much for the opportunity, cultivated and excellent moderation by Vinayak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So on that note, I hope you all enjoyed. So Choose to Lose is a 4-week program. We have almost come towards the end of this 4 weeks, and there are so many special guests and celebrities and our own best trainers. So it was a complete package, and a lot of them have enjoyed it. And I'm personally very happy to see a fantastic program like this coming together. A very holistic program where it covered your diet, nutrition, sleep, exercises, workout, various kind of things. It's a package, right? You want it. You have to choose from where, or you have to choose how to lose. So that's the program. So thank you so much. We have some exciting programs coming forward in this October, November, December. Do look forward. And as doctor said, working out well is one of the great reasons for you to sleep well. So working out, I mean, probably 1 hour of workout a day can help you towards having a great physical and mental health. And on that note, thank you, doctor, once again. And I'm so tempted to go and get some sleep now, but I won't
No.
because, as you suggested, save it for the night. And thank you once again, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. See you all soon.